Hi, everyone. I'm Danica Tormohlen, reporting for Trade Show News Network. And today we're diving into one of the most inspiring transformation stories in the events industry. Abilities Expo has long been a beloved series of events serving the disability community across the US. But over the last 12 months, it's undergone a remarkable evolution. Since being acquired by UK-based Raccoon Media Group in 2023, the show has grown exponentially, up 62% in revenue, 69% more exhibitors, 68% growth in attendance, and a dramatic increase in both visitor and exhibitor satisfaction. Joining me today to talk about the strategy behind that success and what's next for the brand is Katy Roberts, Managing Director at Raccoon Media Group. Katy has led the charge on both sides of the Atlantic, unifying US and UK teams and guiding Abilities Expo into a bold new era, including the upcoming launch of the Abilities International Accessibility Conferences in 2026. We'll cover how her team preserved the show's mission-driven heart while scaling its impact, why community-first thinking is their North Star, and how they're bridging consumer and B2B audiences in new, exciting ways. So we are so excited to have Katy Roberts with us here today. Welcome, Katy.
Hi, Danica. Thanks for having me.
Let's talk first off about the numbers for the Abilities Expo for the first year under Raccoon. They're really impressive with that 62% increase in revenue, 69% more exhibitors, the growth in attendance. Let's talk about some specific strategies that you're using to drive this remarkable growth in just 12 months.
The shows have been going since 1979. So I think there's obviously a lot of history there, a lot of trust within the industry, but there are a few quite straightforward changes and ways of evolving the show that we thought made sense to freshen up the approach to gaining more attendees and obviously gaining more exhibitors. So one of those things was introducing an on-site rebook in our New York show, which took place last May. And just by being able to pull those bookings forward, we started doing that at each show. And what that's allowed the sales team to do is to go out into the market, have time to look for new customers, categories that have previously been quite underserved by the show, just simply through lack of time of being able to focus on those areas. So that really was a great introduction of how an on-site rebook, even with a customer base who aren't used to it, has had such a great impact on us being able to really develop the show in a better way, to bring more new exhibitors, which obviously in turn helps our attendees to find more new products.
Are there any particular new segments among that exhibitor base that have grown or that you've added to the show?
Yeah, the show was previously very focused on mobility products. So we have, I wouldn't say we're there yet, but we are definitely trying to focus more on products like adaptive fashion. I'm very keen on trying to bring more adaptive fashion into the shows. Also products for the visually impaired and hearing impaired. And with that in particular, we really aren't there yet, but it's something that we're focusing on. And we're also trying to develop more areas for disability owned businesses, which have the kind of acronym of DOBE, so DOBE companies, disability owned business enterprises, so that we can support those companies that are entrepreneurs who are part of the disability community that have got a new product or service that they want to bring to the rest of the community. In terms of the attendee growth, the strategy there was really to look at the marketing mix, how we were reaching those attendees. We were previously doing quite a lot with TV commercials and spending quite a bit of budget on that. And more recently, we've recut the budget and seen if we could do more in other ways. So we're doing more with influencers and ambassadors, spending a bit more money there. We've done more outdoor signage as well, out of home, in the cities that we're in. we're just pivoting a bit to try different things that we think could work. And one of the other things that we're really keen to do is to work more in terms of grassroots, where we believe our audience is. So that's talking directly to the rehab centres and the hospitals. So potentially newly injured patients who may not know that we exist. So we've done a lot of work in terms of being able to gain more awareness there.
So when you say outdoor, I'm assuming, are you meaning like billboards?
Yes.
And then of those, I like that idea of ambassadors and influencers and recutting the budget towards that. Of those, is there one that's been most effective? And then maybe expand on what that means exactly in terms of, like, maybe I've seen different packages for influencers, maybe giving people behind the scenes access, hosting them at the event, etc.
Yeah, we've definitely done a lot of those things. So hosting influencers that may already have a product or a service or something that they do. So giving them booth space to be able to do that. But yeah, also being able to give them that behind the scenes access has worked really well for us. And also our text message campaign is one of the most successful things that we do, which certainly in the UK, that isn't something I believe is ever really significantly part of the marketing kind of outreach. But with this audience, they really respond well to our text message campaign. So it's something that works really well for us.
In the US mostly then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And when we talked about the revenues and the increases there, the rebook, I see that. So would you say that most of that has come from exhibitor rebook, or is it also increases in attendance, ticketing, sponsorships, any other areas that have helped drive that revenue increase?
So we don't charge for entry. So all of our attendees come in for free. So we have made progress in sponsorship. One of the team has delivered a really good campaign for Visit Lauderdale. So they wanted to spend money with us on each of our shows to be able to promote the accessibility of the greater Lauderdale area in Florida. And that meant that we delivered an activation on site through a sponsored cafe. So having their branding everywhere, which isn't really something that's been done before at Abilities, and also being able to tailor their marketing activity to deliver results directly so that they can see people that are booking holiday vacations in the greater Lauderdale area. So that's helped with driving revenue for sure. I think the new inquiries that we have for the show, the market is, despite a lot of challenges with the current administration and how that's looking with Medicaid, the market still seems very buoyant. We have a really good number of inbound inquiries. We have people looking for us. So while, as I say, the rebook was a very straightforward way of being able to increase that revenue, the team now have the time to really interrogate those new inquiries to make sure that we're getting the best exhibitors and that we're selling a good amount of booth space.
I'm going to step back for a second. When you were talking about some of those new products, like things for visually impaired, your previous focus was a lot on mobility products. But when you said adaptive fashion, that kind of piqued my interest. Maybe paint a picture for us of the exhibitors that are on the show floor. Like, what is adaptive fashion? What does that mean?
We had a really cool lady in Chicago where she would fundamentally, if you are paralyzed or you have some form of disability that means that you've got limited mobility with your hands, it can make dressing really difficult if you've got fasteners and buttons and all of that kind of thing. So the lady that had a booth in Chicago, she would take existing clothing. So you could send in the mail to her, you can send her existing clothing, so shirts, jeans, whatever it might be. And she would adapt them to your requirements. So if that meant replacing or putting in some like Velcro strips or being able to cut one part of it out of the jeans for somebody that might need to use a catheter. So she is actually adapting existing product for people that have specific needs. Outside of that, we've got a lot of the adaptive fashion product that we have in the shows is all about making fashion clothing that is maybe not seen as fashionable for those people that need help to be able to get into it and they're in a wheelchair. So those kind of fastenings, that are in better locations, so they're easier to get round. And there are some really big brands on the market now that are doing more with fashion, that's making it way more accessible to the disability market. So it's quite exciting. We're hoping that we're going to be embarking on some runway shows next year, which would be really exciting if we can do something with some of the community, having disabled models that are wearing that kind of product.
Great. That's super helpful. And that's interesting about some big brands going into it. And I know a lot of B2B events, anything that has to do with fashion, a lot of them like to do runway shows because those are fun,
Yeah.
right? People
Yeah.
love to see them, and it's a great way to show new products
Yeah.
in action, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me about, you just finished up your show in Chicago. So let's give us a snapshot of how that was, since that's so timely.
We were in the middle of a heat wave in Chicago. There were extreme heat warnings, which for any exhibition organizer is never a good thing. So the attendee numbers were a little down. But the thing about our Chicago audience is that the quality of them is really high. So we get some really good quality people coming through the door who are looking to spend. They don't just have insurance money, they're also looking to spend. They do have disposable income where they're looking to spend on other products. We rebooked 55% of the show, which was up from 25% last year. So that was really great growth, and I think a testament to, and even though the attendee numbers were a little down, the exhibitors were still having a really good time and seeing a really good return on investment. We also book exhibitors into our remaining 2025 shows, as well as our other 26 shows. So that's always really encouraging, because it means that we're booking more in advance, and it gives us an opportunity to build those relationships with the exhibitors. And we do multi-show discounts as well. So the more shows they're doing, the bigger the discount they get, because we're doing 7 shows a year. So if they're national companies looking to reach out the audience in all our regions, then it's as many shows as they can.
Yeah. And is that kind of a new thing too, as well as packaging the multiple shows?
No, I think it was probably Lou that introduced that, which was really good, because it was the mechanic of how it's done through the contract is it's very simple and easy for the exhibitor. So from an organizer point of view, it's great to be able to know that we can bring all those exhibitors together at multiple shows.
It's unusual that a consumer event doesn't charge for attendees. So talk a little bit about that strategy. And so is that now under Raccoon, is that going to stay the same? That continues to be your strategy going forward. That's
Yes.
unusual for a consumer show, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and all of the other consumer shows that Raccoon run, we do charge an entry fee for that. And I guess, yeah, Abilities has never charged in all its history. And I just think that for this audience, it's the right thing for us to be doing. The shows are so joyful, and they bring together this community who, it takes a lot for them to come out for a day and to deal with the bathroom facilities, which unfortunately in all venues are not as good as they should be, to deal with other challenges and transport, and is there enough ADA parking? Those are the type of things that we really try and do as much as we can. We have busy aisles, and so it's a lot of work if you're disabled. We don't believe that charging is something we will ever do to this audience, to our consumer expo anyway. The conference is obviously slightly different because it's a professional audience. Yeah, we won't be charging for the consumers to come in.
I'm sure that helps the community aspect and that mission
Yeah.
that it was launched from back in, like you said, back in the 70s.
Yeah.
Were there any new elements or experiences that you've produced so far, like in Chicago, like beyond the trade show? Talk about some of those, if there's any new or experiential aspects to the show that you want to share.
We bring in more adaptive sports now than we have done before. In Phoenix, actually, this year, we're having an adaptive football game, a football tournament that's going to take place. I think that has been done before, actually, in Abilities. In terms of the stage content, we're really investing in that. So we have the 2 stages. We have the events arena and the workshop. The events arena is high octane, wheelchair dancers, sports, exercise classes, like we have cheerleaders and dancers and singers. And then the workshop is more educational, how to travel adaptive travel and ways of being able to get access to financing. So that kind of more educational side of it. So we've been investing more in the types of speakers that we have. So we have YouTube sensations within the disability community, the Rolettes, who are an internationally known wheelchair dance group, some of whom performed at the Paris Paralympics opening ceremony. So we're just increasing the investment into delivering a really good value day out. Also some more transport as well to help shuttle buses from train stations, that kind of thing, to try and ease the attendees' way of being able to get to the shows as well.
I'm sure that's a lot of unique challenges to consider for attendees beyond your standard B2B show, but even your standard consumer event. You don't have to think typically about all of those accessibility needs for attendees. What's the hardest one, or what's one thing that you're constantly trying to focus on?
The bathrooms. Well, the most
Yeah.
frustrating, or the bathrooms,
Yeah.
100%,
Okay.
because what happens is the venues say that they are ADA compliant, but what that means in reality is that there might be one stall that is just about okay for a wheelchair user. We have adult changing rooms that we put into the show. We bring in actually portable bathrooms as well, because there isn't. So we invest in that and spend thousands on bringing in more bathrooms because there aren't enough. Yeah, it's very frustrating that having to work with the venue on that, for sure.
Talk a little bit about merging the US and the UK teams to create a unified high performing group. What challenges did you face in this integration, and how do you overcome them?
When we've basically had two sets of organisers. So we had the US team and the UK team. And I think it's fair to say that both groups would say that they're very good and, the best at what they do. So when you try and integrate those two groups, it's quite challenging to get to a middle ground where there's not one group saying they're better than the other at certain things. But to be honest, my approach as leading this portfolio was that the US team were experts in their field of putting on shows for the disability community, for sure. And they're also Americans, we're in the US market. So in terms of how you navigate that with venues and suppliers, and even just the verbiage on marketing activity and things like that, I basically often would say to the UK team, these guys are going to they'll lead the charge, and we can identify, we might find opportunities and gaps and improvements and efficiencies and that kind of thing. But they've been running these shows really well for the last kind of 12 to 15 years. And let's just make sure that we don't disrupt anything unless it's really for the good of the show and the audience. And that kind of seems to have worked. I'm lucky that my experience is in sales. I've worked so closely with operations teams. I also have worked in branding and marketing roles. So actually, as I work with all the members of the team in their different departments, I think they can see that I have got that experience. So that helps, again, for me to say, I understand what you're doing. I see what you're doing. I get it. So I'm not going to tell you what to do. Let's discuss how we might be able to make improvements for ultimately what you're doing. And I think any acquisitions and mergers that happen are not easy. I've got a really talented, qualified, sometimes quite outspoken bunch of US colleagues that are my team, who I really love. And we don't always see eye to eye, but I think that we've really been able to respect each other's views, and I respect them hugely as a team. So yeah, I think that approach seems to have worked pretty well.
Let's talk a little bit about the expansion from the US to Europe, and then the B2B aspect as well that you're adding in.
We have yet to expand outside of the US with
Yeah.
Abilities. It is definitely part of the kind of roadmap as to where we want to go. Abilities is a really strong brand, and we've got a really good format, I think, now, which will evolve with the introduction of the conferences to make it more adapted to the European market, the Middle East market, potentially the Far East market. So we are looking at lots of options at the moment, but it's important to me that we deliver the conferences really well next year, simultaneously as to looking at all those other opportunities. But what happened with the conferences is that there are a number of associations within this industry, within the what we call complex rehab. So that could be anything from physical therapists to occupational therapists to people working in a rehab centre to the dealers that are working in the kind of independent stores that are providing the equipment to a patient, to an end user. So there's lots of different people that are part of the kind of process and the ecosystem of what happens if you are newly injured or you have some kind of disease like MS or CP or something like that, and who are the touch points with that help you to become more independent. And we started talking with all these organizations, and they were saying, we all are working towards a similar goal, but we all work in silo. You guys have got this platform that is unbiased as a consumer event. You're not we're not an association. We don't have membership or anything like that. We're not competing for anything in that way. It would be cool if we could bring it all to get everyone together. And so I worked quite hard over the last 6 months to bring everybody into the fold and say, understand their challenges and understand what they wanted to achieve from us all getting together. And we've been able to create now a coalition of all these industry associations, which will be clinical education. So that is, if you are a PT or an OT, you need to collect CUUs, which is continuing education units, to be able to continue practicing. So it's quite important for those groups of people to be able to attend sessions that deliver them CEUs. So a clinical education track is one of the things we'll deliver in those 3 cities. Also a business optimization track. So that's basically helping those providers and dealers become that are effectively selling the equipment, how to make their businesses more efficient with the systems they need, with the insurance kind of drawdowns that they need, which is not a simple task. And then we're looking at some adaptive living track as well, which might cover things like finance or travel or sports, service dogs. And if you're a clinician working in a hospital or a rehab centre, that patient may ask you, how am I going to drive again? And if that person has got some information on adaptive driving, who's the association they can go to, what's the basic level of information, then that's what we're trying to achieve. So it's helping them share that information and educate. So the conference will happen over 2 days, and it will shoulder the first day of the expo. And that's going to be in LA, New York, and Chicago. So we're expecting around 600 attendees in each of those cities, and that will be made up of that audience. And the content is supported by all of those associations, which is really great because we know they've got the credibility, they've got the knowledge, just the facilitators. We have the infrastructure. We're investing a lot of money into making sure we can deliver these conferences. And I think those organisations can see that although we're a for-profit company, we really see the opportunity of creating 3 really big international destinations, which is hence the Abilities International kind of slight adaptation of the name, to co-locate these conferences with the expo. So those 3 events become really big destinations where we can set the standard for the industry by bringing everybody together. And that's what I mean about nailing that concept. And if we can do that, which we will, then it's more likely that we can roll it out over other areas across the world.
That is super exciting to be partnering with associations and offering those CEUs and bringing in that B2B kind of element, the trade element into it. Will you be charging for the tracks?
Yes.
Yeah. So those attendees will be charged.
That's right. Yeah. But then they could obviously have access into the consumer show as well, which if you're a clinician, it's really interesting to see what new product there is, something you've not seen before that could help a patient that you've just taken on. And the Abilities Expo in LA, we have 200 exhibitors. So within that space, it's a great kind of melting pot of different types of products and services that an OT or a PT can use to help their patients further. So hopefully they'll get to take time out of their schedules is also, that's the challenge. So hopefully they'll be able to have the destination all in one, where they've got their CU, some kind of peripheral kind of education or sessions around those other softer topics that I talked about, like service dogs, and then they can see new products and meet manufacturers as well and network with each other. So we're trying to deliver everything all in one, which sometimes doesn't work, but I think because we're very focused on the industry and who these people are, I'm very confident that it's gonna be good for them.
Yeah. One more final question for you. Amber. What's one thing that you discovered or learned now that having this portfolio under your purview that you maybe didn't know before about the market
God,
overall?
anything, so many things about the market. This market is incredibly complex, and I've learned so much about, like I said, that ecosystem of how when you're running trade shows, it's fairly simple to see that kind of buyer-seller relationship. Who's the audience? Who are the exhibitors? Bring them together, everyone does business, and it all works. With this industry, and when you throw in things like the American healthcare system and how that works and the complexities of that on its own, and then policy and how that impacts it, and also just things like the fact that our attendees, is very difficult for them to get up and out because of everything that they need to go through. We don't open the show till 11 because we're trying to be respectful of them. We don't want to, that it takes them ages to get out. So it's just little things like that that I think, and we don't have carpet because that's hard to roll over and things like that. So there's a whole load of things that you don't really ever think of, just loads. I remember my first show, I was told not to wear any perfume because of sensory, real high sensitivity and sensory issues, and that having something like perfume could be really prohibitive to somebody and it could make their experience bad. Just things that you don't think of in a normal trade show environment that, yeah, it's just really interesting to learn.
Thank you so much, Katy, for your time today and telling us a little bit about the growth prospects and strategies around Abilities Expo and the expansion.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.